Every human being, it is said, is part of the social fabric. And indeed, so obvious does this seem that if ever we should happen to hear of a man who was actually isolated, actually alone, we might well assume that he was a stranger among us, an intruder on the earth. Yet the case of at least one such man has been recorded.
He was lying in a plowed field when they found him. Gillum, the hired man, was the first to notice the body. It lay white and naked and terrible under the noonday sun.
A dead man lying out in the field. He's naked as the day he was born. I never seen him in these parts before. You'd better come out and have a look, sir.
The owner of the farm, having examined the corpse carefully, announced that he had never seen him before either. And so the Petersfield police were called in. And the local inspector decided that identification should not be too difficult.
It's simply a matter of finding the chap's clothes, that's all. He must have been wearing them when he came out here. There are no fresh car tracks in the road, and he could scarcely have walked up from town naked without causing some comment. So the clothes must be around here somewhere.
But the clothes were not to be found. During the search, however, the hired man made one important discovery.
Footprints, Inspector. They've been made by bare feet, if you notice. So they must be his.
And so they followed the stranger's footprint. They followed them through the road a half-mile away, and across the road and into the field on the other side. There the footprint stopped.
Why, it's almost as if the bloke came from another planet. Just dropped down out of the heavens, he did, and died.
But the inspector, who was a practical man, chose to ignore Mr. Gillum's fantastic suggestion. It might prove a little more difficult than he had thought at first, but in the end, the body would be identified. At the inquest, the coroner reported that there were
no wounds on the deceased. There were neither drugs nor poison in the contents of his stomach. He was obviously not the victim of foul play. His death was due simply to exposure.
Exposure? How could he have died of exposure? He could see the house from where he was. All he'd have had to do was knock on the door and walk in.
What the gentleman says may be quite true. Nevertheless, death was due to exposure. To continue, the man was between 35 and 40 years of age. He was not a manual worker. His hands and nails indicate that. He was well nourished and, I should say, well educated. A man of considerable substance. It should certainly not be difficult to learn the identity of such a person.
The efforts that were exerted during the weeks that followed were more than adequate. A photograph of the man, together with a description of him, was published in practically every paper throughout England. 2 months later, on April 16th, the London Daily News reported that the police were still without a clue, that there was no record of any missing person bearing the slightest resemblance to this man. If most Englishmen were puzzled by the affair, Mr. Gillum, the hired man, was not.
They're wasting their time with their photographs and whatnot, I tell you. The bloke was a stranger, and not just here in Hampshire either. He was a stranger on the earth. They'll never find anyone who ever knew him.
Today, the identity of the dead man still remains a mystery. The incident takes its rightful place in the annals of amazing stories. Stories incredible but true.
There are thousands of cases similar to that of the girl named Rose Puglisi. No single one of them, perhaps, is of earth-shaking significance. And yet, taken all together, they comprise an impressive body of evidence. Evidence that there is a whole world of human experience which science has not even begun to understand.
At 15, Rose Pugliese was a normal, attractive American girl. If she had one idiosyncrasy, it was what she called her intuition, about which she boasted frequently, much to the amusement of her family and friends. But after the night of February 1st, 1941, they ceased to be amused. About 11 o'clock that night, Rose's parents, returning from a neighborhood movie, found their daughter sitting in the living room, staring moodily out of the window.
Why, Rose, darling, you're still up.
I don't feel like going to bed.
Worried about something, Emmy?
No, not exactly.
Then up you go.
Reluctantly, Rose climbed the stairs to her bedroom. 10 minutes later, her mother glanced up to find the girl standing by her chair.
Why, Rose, what's the matter?
I can't do it, Mother. I just can't go to bed in that room.
But why not?
It's just a feeling. I feel as if I were never going to sleep in that bed again.
Well, what do you want, dear?
Stay down here in the living room, in the big chair there. I'd rather stay awake all night than go into my room again.
And neither logic nor ridicule could persuade Rose Pugliese to change her mind. An hour later, her parents retired to their own rooms. And Rose, looking disconsolate and a little sheepish, curled up in the big chair. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Pugliese opened his eyes and stared into the darkness. Something had disturbed his sleep. A sound. An odor, strange and yet unpleasantly familiar. In an instant, he was sitting erect in his bed, tugging violently at his wife's arm.
Mother! Mother, wake up!
What's the matter, dear?
We've got to get out of here. There's a fire.
Throwing their robes around them, they yanked open the door and hurried out into the hall.
Father, look! Under that door! Smoke! Oh, the fire's in Rose's bedroom!
Before the night was over, the interior of the Pugliese home had been gutted, Rose's bedroom completely destroyed, and her bed, the bed which she had a feeling she would never sleep in again, was reduced to ashes. It was inevitable that the local newspaper should get wind of this strange affair. And when the reporter came to interview Rose Pugliese, he asked her, first of all, whether she did not think it was remarkable that her life should have been saved by a mysterious premonition.
Remarkable? No, I don't see anything very remarkable about it. You see, I've had hunches like that lots of times, and every one of them turned out to be true.
No, the story of Rose Pugliese is not a unique one. Thousands of other ordinary people have had similar hunches, similar premonitions. And as long as science rejects the idea of supernormal perception and scoffs at the gift of prophecy and yet provides us with no alternate explanation, just so long we must continue to label such stories incredible but true.
It is said that banshees were abroad the night before the strange disappearance of the two young sons of Mario Panzini, a prominent architect of Bari, Italy. But even the presence of banshees scarcely explains this event. For banshees foretell the coming of death, and there was no question of death involved, only a question of incredible speed through time and space.
On a certain January morning in the year 1901, the streets of Bari were flooded with water. And so it was natural that Giuseppe and Niccolo, the two young sons of Signor Panzini, should have been eager to sail their toy boats in the gutter in front of their house.
We could play for a little while.
Well, suppose you play for half hour. How would that be?
We'll come back in at 9:30 sharp, Father.
But when 9:30 arrived, the boys failed to appear. Somewhat annoyed over their lack of responsibility, Signor Panzini went out to find them. By the time he had searched the whole block, he was thoroughly angry. As he approached his home again, he heard the telephone ringing.
Hello?
Signor Panzini?
Yes?
Signor, my name is Father Vanetti. I am calling you from the Capuchin Monastery here in Malfatti. I wanted to tell you not to be worried about your sons. They are here at the monastery with us.
Oh, but you must be mistaken, Father. My boys were here in Bari a half hour ago. They could scarcely have run 30 miles in 30 minutes.
And so, Signor Panzini rode the 30 miles to Malfatti. And there, standing frightened and bewildered in the reception hall of the monastery, his two sons awaited him.
How in the heavens and name you get here?
We don't know, Father. We remembered stepping out of the house with our boats, and then we don't remember anything else after that.
All the way back to Bari, Signor Panzini remained strangely silent, and on his face were written both wonder and fear. When he arrived home, he asked the boys to stay in the house for the rest of the day. Reluctantly, they went into their room and closed the door behind them. A few minutes later, their father stood outside that same door, calling them.
Giuseppe! Niccolo! Boys, when I call you, why don't you... Good Lord. They're gone.
At that very same moment, the signor's brother, Gregorio Panzini, was sitting in the living room of his home in Trani, a town some 50 miles from Bari, when he heard...
Well, this is a pleasant surprise. My two nephews come all the way from Paris to call on me. Boys, what's the matter with you?
Where are we? How did we get here? Who are you?
Once again, Giuseppe and Niccolo Panzini were in a state of profound hypnosis. Once again, they had moved through space at an unbelievable speed, a speed which no vehicle was capable of attaining in the year 1901. And no key has ever been provided to this strange riddle. It belongs in a long list of mysteries, incredible but true.